The basic idea of the article beyond government size, types of government intervention and corruption is the knowledge that fiscal pressure, the amount of money government spent, did not show generally did not show a significant relationship with corruption in past studies. And then also it's so messy, it's so imprecise, the measure of size of government. So the basic idea is to move beyond the notion of size of governments and to pay attention of types of government intervention, meaning that governments, in order to fulfill their objectives, they can make use of different types of intervention, and most importantly, fiscal intervention by means of fiscal expenditure, and then regulation of the economy by means of quantity and also quality of the regulation that is imposed on the economy and the markets. So that the basic idea is to disentangle the effect of these big, most important two types of government intervention, and to see if we can find a significant and systematic effect on corruption of these two types. Say again, fiscal burden and regulatory burden. Regulatory burden, which is based not only in the quantity of regulations but also in the quality of regulations. It's not only quantity what matters. The methodology used is a quantitative methodology, taking advantage of a data set for a former 28 EU countries, which meaning the 27 current members and the UK, and also three countries in the European, additional countries in the European economic space, which are Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland. And this is for the period 2007-2017, which allows us using panel data in different forms, GLS, fixed, and also in order to take care of potential endogeneity between corruption and regulation, and also to take care of some path dependence in the perceptions on corruption. We use a dynamic panel. So basically, the dependent variable is built as a perceptions on corruption in different international studies or data sets. The basic one is the perception of corruption from Transparency International, and then besides fiscal burden, we're taken as a government expenditure on GDP, and regulatory quality. As I said before, it's not only quantity but also quality what matters. So I take regulatory quality from World Bank. There are some other variables that are introduced in the exercise. Some of them are basically related to politics and institutions, and so the seniority of the democracy, so how old the democracy is in the country, the percentage of women in government, and one that I think is quite important, which is the legal origin and administrative tradition of each country, because besides the composition of fiscal and regulatory interventions, there's a dependent on past traditions, administrative traditions, some of them, particularly the French one, the French legacy, which is related to more strict and rigid procedures in public administration, and it might have some relationship with corruption, and also some economic variables or socioeconomic variables, but to say like education, unemployment, openness to trade, and overall GDP are also considered. The main results we obtain is that regulatory quality shows a significant systematic negative relationship with corruption, meaning the better the regulatory quality, the lower the corruption, the perception of corruption, across all estimations techniques. And on the contrary, fiscal burden, measured as government expenditure on GDP, does not show any systematic and significant relationship with corruption, meaning that the type of intervention matters. Other systematic associations are between the French legal origin, which is found to be more related to corruption, particularly when compared to German and Scandinavian legal origins. Seniority of democracy is consistently related to corruption in a negative way, meaning the older the democracy, the lower the corruption. And also among the socioeconomic variables, education is the one who shows to have a more significant effect on corruption, meaning that the more educational levels attained in the country, the lower the corruption. Now, it is important to recall that this analysis is based on dependent variables who are taken from as perceptions on corruption. And perceptions on corruption based on surveys to experts and businessmen and managers of companies. So I conduct some robustness checks, one of them with a more wide surveys in the European Union, which also include a citizen's perspective, and more importantly, I also conduct a robustness check taking as dependent variable the objective corruption risk proposed by Michael Fazekas and other authors, and taking crucially the percentage of one single bidder procurement processes in each country. The availability of data is a bit different here, so this is not exactly a replication of the same database, while however it is quite close, and the results still hold when we use these different dependent variables for robustness check. Consistently, regulatory quality is negatively linked to corruption, whereas fiscal burden, expended fiscal expenditure, it does not have any significant systematic association. This is then basically the main core contribution. It is the type of intervention what matters rather than the size of government, and particularly interventions linked to regulatory quality, to bad regulatory quality, which in a part might be too many regulations, and some other part might be not good enough regulations, will be linked to corruption. And furthermore, another interesting, even if not that core contribution, another interesting contribution is that legacy origins and administrative traditions also matter regarding corruption in countries. Ways to put further research in this area are several. I think we need more refined measures of government expenditure and also type of regulations. For instance, in the case of government expenditure, it has been suggested that the effect might be different between earmarked expenditure like pensions, etc., where governments do not have that much discretion, or administration does not have that much discretion, as opposed to discretionary expenditures which could be more prone to distortions or to individual kind of decisions distorting results. And then in the policy arena, as a policy implication, I think that a very interesting policy implication emerges, and also it takes us to a policy puzzle. The clear implication is that if regulatory quality is improved, levels of corruption will decrease. And now the puzzle is that, as shown in a wonderful article published in Regulation and Governance in 2021, just a few months ago, by Sharon Herring and Victor Lapuente, there's an association between fiscal redistribution and trust in government, and regulatory redistribution and trust in government, meaning that the more citizens trust governments, the more governments use fiscal tools for redistribution, whereas regulatory redistribution is associated with lower levels of trust in governments. Now, if we want to move away from too much regulatory distribution and replace it with more, in case, fiscal redistribution, we need more trust in government, but corruption is also undermining trust in government. So the policy puzzle, which should get more research, is how societies in which level of trust in government is lower can move away from regulatory tools that are associated to low trust in government and go to intervention tools that have a higher association in trust in government. And I think that unpacking this puzzle and trying to understand better is really a road to research, which might be very socially profitable. And that's basically the content. Thank you.